Well, welcome to another episode of Opinionate, where me and Kevin are going to discuss God. Some uh, shoot, wait, where me and Kevin are going to provide you with a general argument, with a general overview of arguments on God. Um, and Kevin's
or,
pretty
or
familiar
some
with the
other
literature.
or
What?
some other issue. So we'll just like provide you two sides of the debate on some philosophical issue, and the issue for today will be whether God exists.
Exactly. And secondly, we're going to create a poster. I mean, come up with some ideas for a poster about God, to be put in sort of our school community to sort of prompt critical thinking for
hmm
community members. And that's that. All right, let's begin.
Sure. So I guess I want to begin by just like asking asking you like, do you believe in God? Do you think God exists? And so on.
Okay, well, I think that we can't know there's no way to prove God's existence, and there's no way to disprove it. So I'm a agnostic, I suppose.
What do you mean by proving? Do you mean like providing a mathematical proof that is like 100%?
Yeah,
Or do you mean it like more more generally? Like I can prove that I'm talking to right now, but obviously that kind of proof is not mathematical. Um, do you take the second kind of proof? Do you think that is count? Do you think that counts as a proof as well?
I mean that certainly counts as justification, but not proof. I mean, I do think that we can provide justifications for or against God's existence. But what do you think?
I'm sorry, I'm still a bit on the weather, so I definitely agree with. Well, first of all, I would like to say that those who believe that we can provide proofs, uh, they're called natural theologians. They believe in natural theology, which is basically a term in modern philosophy to mean like providing a kind of waterproof proof for God. Um, and I mean, personally, I don't take those arguments for a very general reason because I'm an atheist. I do not believe in God, but I do see a revival in those kinds of views, especially by a philosopher by the name of Plantinga. And Plantinga was pretty famous for reviving a kind of proof for God, and he called it the ontological argument. So this is the kind of argument that natural theologians like to talk about. Um, Henry, have you heard of the argument? Do you want to give us like a
Yeah.
brief? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I've been reading the book, Nature of Necessity. Wait, no. Wait, yes. Right, by
Yeah.
Plantinga. Right.
hmm
So, I read a part of it about the ontological argument. So I think the argument essentially is that, so for first of all, we define God as, this, being, than which there can be no greater. And that we think that it is possible, right? To the best of our knowledge, it is possible that God exists. So, um, a being who exists in the actual world is greater than a being who doesn't exist in the actual world. And so it is impossible that God only exists in our understanding, which he does. So he must also exist in the actual world. Um, and that concludes the argument. I think to the best of my knowledge, that's the argument.
Right. Do you think that he provided a good argument?
Uh, I feel like there's something sketchy about the premise that it is possible that God exists. It seems that he's sort of like confusing sort of an epistemological sort of position, sort of thing with a metaphysical sort of thing.
Well, I agree with you that that premise is the problematic one. In fact, another philosopher called Peter Van Wagen, he famously said that there's a set of argument. He called them model arguments, and those are arguments that start off sounding all normal, like sounding makes a lot of sense. And then they suddenly slip in what he calls the model premise, such as it's possible, so on and so on. And he says that, well, those arguments are, well, first of all, they are valid arguments. But he says that people may be skeptical of them because the model premise is just kind of sketchy. And that's a problem that he finds with most of these arguments. And he personally recommend a kind of model skepticism. Um, Basically, he wants us to say that we don't know what's possible and what's not, and we should reject all arguments that has this kind of sketchy model premise. Anyway, going back to your concern though, I don't see how Plantinga confuses epistemology with metaphysics. Um, I think his premise is a metaphysical one. He says that it is a fact of the world that it's possible for there to be an all-powerful being. And personally, that is the premise that I'm going to reject as well, because, well, here's the thing: to say that it's possible for there to be a powerful being is to say that he exists in our world. Um, like, I'm not going to grant that premise because if I understand the full implication of the premise, it would just be to grant that God exists. So, like, it's too close to the conclusion in the sense that, first, I don't know how to find an independent justification um, for your premise. So it's possible that God exists. Well, what makes it possible? And this is the problem that a lot of people have with these kind of model stuff is like, what ground the truth of those model statements? Like, if it's true that's possible that I'm wearing a red shirt right now, like, what grounds that truth? What makes it so that's possible that I'm wearing a red shirt? And this may be unproblematic for a lot of cases, but when it comes to these kind of abstract things, like, is it possible for there to be platonic numbers, like real numbers? Uh, Perhaps, like I'm not sure what grounds that truth. So I don't really know what to say when it comes to these kind of things. Um, but then again, this is metaphysical. I don't see how epistemology comes into play. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so, can you
Well,
introduce to us like why you're atheist, or like, well, what's the reason?
right. Wait. Just back up to the other claim. It is, of course, epistemological in the sense that it's whether we can know model statements. Skepticism is a epistemological view. I'm just saying, like, the subject of debate. The subject of the debate is a metaphysical claim about possibility.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
okay, so why don't I believe? Well, there are two reasons. The first, of course, is I'm raised in a culture that doesn't believe in God, and so people around me, people with authority, they tell me that there's no God, and I ought to believe them. And this is actually one of the reasons why I think that most people who do believe in God are justified, because authority tells them that there is a God. And of course, like, you might say, well, that's like a argument from authority, isn't it, Kevin? Like, it's just one of the fallacies I learned in school. But it's, on the other hand, it's just testimonial evidence. It's just ordinary testimonial evidence. Like, when you want to know what's the atomic number of chromium, right? You ask the chemist, and the chemist tells you a number, and you believe it because that's testimonial evidence. So I think when it comes to God, most of us are justified because we believe in the testimony. Uh, Testimony of the Catholic Church, for instance, that might be an epistemically reputable source because they have authority in the intellectual community. Excuse me. What do you think? Do you think that most people are justified, believers and non-believers alike?
Well, it seems to me that like, I mean, like, so I think like like the question is like, what is it we're talking about when we say like that like someone's justified in believing in something? Because you're saying that there is some type of threshold, above which we can trust our sort of intellectual appearance, or we can trust something as testimonial evidence.
Hmm.
But like, that threshold is, that threshold can also vary by culture. Um,
I don't think
so
so.
I'm not sure. Okay.
I mean, I think the source of your justification obviously varies by culture, but I think that, like, one thing people like to say, especially about people who don't agree with them, is that they're not justified or they lack the evidence. For instance, if you're an agnostic, right, you might look at people who are devoutly Christian or devoutly Muslim and say they're not justified because they don't have the evidence for God. But here's the thing, like, we often don't consider how culture, and in particular, authority, is a kind of evidence, right? If I grow up in a Christian community, then one of my evidence for the case of God will come from testimony from my local church father. But as we also learn, uh, many people don't, but some people, they do realize that this kind of evidence is ultimately untrustworthy because there are so many religions around the world, definitely over 1,000. So uh, the real reason I don't believe in God, of course, is not testimony. The real reason is I think the problem of evil is a valid problem, and I think that the existence of not all evil, but particular kinds of evil, is inconsistent with the existence of God. So I think a good example of that is natural evil. I think natural evil is incompatible with God, and I think because natural evil exists, so God don't exist.
Right. Yeah, I think like Plantinga, besides the free will defense, he also provided, this pretty basic defense that like maybe it is simply the case that it is beyond our comprehension of like, God's intention could be beyond our comprehension, for having these like things which we call evils. What do you think? Natural evils. It could be that like he has some, greater sort of intention that we simply cannot grasp.
Well, that is certainly possible, but I don't see why I should think that's the case, because um, I think it would be quite a stretch to. I think it's often very easy to say that in theory, that like, okay, you don't know why this natural thing, like, you think that this natural thing is evil, but it's actually not. It's actually good, but you just don't know why it's good. Theoretically, that is a valid defense. You could buy that, but I think it comes with a high price because when you actually look at the world, it's hard to believe that these natural things can be good. Um, and of course, you might say, "Well, what do your monkey brain?" Wait, sorry, you probably wouldn't say that because if you're a Christian, you think I'm not monkey. But what can your like finite brain understand? But look, right? I look at the world, I see stuff like COVID-19, and I'm currently sick right now, right? This is a kind of virus that is natural. I just don't see how this virus is somehow good to me. Like, I've been suffering from it for like a week. It uh, like, of course, like, some people say, "Oh, that's not theoretical. You're just making an emotional defense, right?" But why not? Like, if I really don't believe that it's good, you telling me that there's a God that somehow makes it good. I just don't buy it.
Okay, but what if we combine sort of like non-identity with determinism? So we say that like, if it is the case that you counterfactually you could have not gotten COVID like at this particular time, you would not have been Kevin. You would not have existed at all. You would probably have been, I don't know, uh, Ken, or some person, some other person. And because determinism is true, that's possibly the case, combined with non-identity, right? Maybe God created this world, and he gave you this life, which you consider worth living. Still,
Well, first of all, no identity is not true. I could have not gotten sick. Um, I could have lived in America. Um, I could have had 12 iPhones with me right now. I could have done all those things, and I could have done all those things. So I don't see how non-identity is a problem.
No, the thing is, like, if determinism is true, if you don't have free will, you could not have done those things.
Well, if determinism is true, then the problem of evil for God, oh, just everything's a problem of evil for God. Determinism is true. Like, why would God have created me rather than someone else who would have been happier? Why me?
I guess. Okay. So let's talk about like beliefs in general. What do you think what do you think constitutes a good theory to believe in?
I think, as David Hume once said, wisely, that a wise man should proportion his belief to his evidence. So the better the evidence, the stronger the belief, or the higher the credence, if you like.
Okay. But isn't there some like evidence is not pre-theoretical, right? You can't have like pre-theoretical evidence. The paradigm in which you take evidence, you interpret evidence is itself some theory, and like, well then which paradigm to believe in?
Right. So that's basically the claim that observation is theory laden, so called. But um, right, I think that's right. But here's the thing, right? There are two kinds of so theories are just really things that explain true hypotheses, and there are two kinds of hypotheses. There are theoretical ones, um, like the Earth is flat or the Earth is round, and there are like um a, a luxury one. So like ones that support theories but are not themselves a part of the theory, like the hypothesis that if this weight reads 50 grams, then this thing weighs 50 grams. Like this is a hypothesis too, but it's not part of my theory. It's just part of the kind of experiment, sort of. And good theories will try to capture all the theoretical hypotheses. If there are, well, I think we're going off a tangent here, but if some of them don't agree with my theory, then I have two options. First, I can reject the theoretical hypotheses and reject my theory, or I can reject some kind of experimental hypotheses, like the hypothesis that the weight is working. Well, it really depends on how severe is the problem and how common is the problem, and a lot of other things of which one I should reject. There's no like golden rule for this, as Karl Popper said. Karl Popper offered, in fact, like five different criterion for choosing when to reject or accept a theory. So,
Mm.
yeah, I agree. It's not as simple as just comparing the evidence. We definitely have to consider other things, like experimental conditions.
Do you think a paradigm could self-contradict? And by paradigm, I mean sort of like, well, I see three things at play, right? The first is sort of the data. The second is the paradigm, and the third is the theory, right? The actual theory. The paradigm is the thing that relates the data to the theory. Um, and
It's
just for instance, what do you say?
it's not.
So what is it?
A paradigm is just a good example of an application of a theory, or like a good example of how to do science.
Yeah, well, that's how you relate your data to your scientific theories, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's something more, right? Um, for instance, we have like what's called latent variables, um, variables that are in the mathematics but not really like out there, not observable variables. These latent variables are not a part of the bridge between the observation and the theory, but they're also included in the paradigm because the paradigm is supposed to um, kind of, in a way, uh, demonstrate in some way how these latent variables and observable variables go together. So that's like a higher order thing that only happens within a theory.
Okay. Do you think a paradigm could like self-contradict?
Sure,
Is it
if it's really
possible to,
anything can
yeah?
self-contradict. It's really bad.
So how's that going to work? Like, how, give me an example of like how the paradigm could self-contradict.
Well, if it says something about itself and then it rejects what it says about itself, then it self-contradicts.
Right. Yeah, yes, but does that ever happen? Has that ever happened before in
Probably
like
not.
scientific paradigms?
I don't know. Probably not.
All right.
Well, some people say that quantum mechanics is sort of self-contradictory. Um, for example, you have a bunch of paradox, which is really a euphemism for contradiction. But yeah, perhaps it is. Maybe quantum mechanics might be, but I'm not sure. Probably not though.
Okay. All right. Let's move back. Let's get back
Oh,
to
yeah.
God.
And another thing,
Um.
like, okay, one last thing about the self-contradiction part. Some philosophers would argue that self-contradicting isn't necessarily bad. Like, you may have power-consistent logic or non-classical logic. I think Putnam, he wrote a paper called Quantum Logic, in which he says something about along the lines of logic is like empirical in some sense. So whether a logical truth is true, we have to go out to the world and test the logic principle. And like if quantum mechanics violates the logic principle, it's not quantum mechanics' fault, but it's our logic's fault. And we should actually change our logic into a kind of power consistent logic that allows for contradictions in order to fit the observation we get from quantum mechanics. So being contradictory isn't necessarily bad. It's only bad when you have classical logic or first order logic.
Okay. Uh, right. But when there are when there are when there are two paradigms, neither of them are self-contradictory. How do you choose?
Well, simplicity mostly.
Okay.
And there are two types of simplicity. There's ontological simplicity or parsimony, like how many uh, undefined or primitive values or variables do you have? But on the other hand, there's also theoretical simplicity, like how many laws of nature do you propose? Things like that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now, um, why are you an atheist instead of an agnostic?
Problem of evil, that's why I said.
Okay.
Agnostics
Okay.
still
Okay.
have to deal with the problem of evil.
No, but like, don't you feel like being agnostic is more reasonable in the sense that it doesn't rule out the possibility that that well the thing is like it doesn't give as much weight to like it doesn't give as much credibility to our to the thought that there might be some reason beyond our comprehension, right? It's a question of scale here, right?
Uh, well, atheism also don't rule out the possibility of God existing. It's just so unlikely that we're not justified to believe it, and we're justified to believe the opposite. For instance, I might be justified to believe that uh, Santa Claus don't exist, so I can be a Santa Clausist. But that doesn't mean I think Santa Claus can't exist. Well, he surely can, but I don't. I just think that we should believe that he doesn't, because I'm a fallibilist about belief. If I believe something, it's not because I'm 100% certain. I believe something because I have justification. Um, and I do think we have justification to believe against the existence of God. But can God exist? Of course, and anything can exist. Well, yeah, uh, uh, yeah, in a very general sense, of course, anything can exist. So,
Wait, why do you take it? On what basis do you say that we have justification that God does not exist? Like, on what basis, like, are you, do you believe in the problem of evil?
well, I go around, I see natural evil. I think to myself, well, if there's natural evil, right? Seems pretty bad. So probably not like all good God created all of this. So should probably not believe in him.
I find like the claim probably not a bit sketchy. It
Why?
seems to be sort of like dodging the problem.
Well, it's like I think of Santa Claus, right? I go around Antarctica. I look around, not here, right? Probably don't exist.
Right, but like on what basis do you say that it probably doesn't exist? You know,
On the base,
what do you mean by probably anyways?
I mean, of course, you can raise the good old argument that, oh, if God had a reason, you probably wouldn't know. But like, is that, do I think that there's a logical problem with God? No. I think God can totally exist with natural evil. I think it's a logical possibility. I just don't think it's a very appealing possibility. It's not a possibility that I'm going to put my bet in. I'm going to put my bet in the other possibility that there is natural evil and there's no God. So I think
So
Plantinga actually does a very good job to solve the logical problem of evil. So I don't think that the problem is logical because I am not 100% certain that there is natural evil. It can turn out that all these natural evil are really just natural goods. Like, sure. And my little brain might not comprehend how it's a natural good, but it might be. But I'm just not betting on that possibility because I don't see why I should bet on it. Like, if you give me $100, like, what would you bet on? Would you bet on that COVID-19 is evil, or would you bet on COVID-19 is good? Like, what would you bet on?
well, I would bet on maybe a 50-50
No, you have to
chance.
place
I
your
don't know.
you have to place your bet, one of them. You can't bet on 50-50. That's not a bet.
No, 50-50 is agnostic,
Right, but what if you have to
right?
place a bet? Like, you can't be agnostic if you're a better.
Well, sure, I would say that it's evil.
Yeah, same for me. And I think everyone should bet on it's evil. And that is just to say that everyone should think that there's no God. Because if you bet on this evil, then you bet on atheism, and I bet on atheism. So
Fair enough. Well, let's examine some arguments for the existence of God. Can you, introduce to us some arguments in
um,
syllogism, preferably?
okay, well, there's fine tuning. Fine tuning says that um, the world being so life supportive, let's say, is very unlikely without God, but it's very likely with God. So there's probably God. I dealt with this problem elsewhere, placed in the syllogist. Don't think it's a good argument. Well, actually, I was just looking at the Phil surveys. So the Phil surveys was something that David Commerce and his colleague did. They surveyed a lot of professional philosophers and mostly analytic, of course, and they asked them like what they think on various issues. It turns out when it comes to fine tuning, about 17% thought, okay, let me actually pull it up. So I don't want to mislead you with data here. 1 second. Okay. Fail surveys, fine tuning. Okay, so for philosophers, when it comes to explaining cosmological fine tuning, so the idea that like if we vary various constants in physics by just a tiny bit, like when it exists, 12% thought that it's by design, 10.7% thought it was because of the multiverse, 22% thought it's a brute fact, and 15% thought that there's no fine tuning. So yeah.
Wait, what's the difference between the latter, like the last two options?
Wait, that doesn't add up to 100. What am I looking at? One sec. One sec. What? Why doesn't that add up to 100? Um. Okay. Wait. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. So, um, yeah, design is 17%, multiverse is 15%, brute fact is 31%. Wow. No fine tuning is 12.7, and then other is 18. So, most people thought that it was brute fact. I'll begin with that. Yeah, it can be. I mean, I don't think that's a good response though, because it offers a lot of reason for the theist who might just argue that, I don't know, the existence of God is a brute fact. Or like Plantinga, who thought that the existence of God is a basic fact, which uh which is kind of like a brute fact. Personally, I explain this as a multiverse because I think the multiverse hypothesis is good for a lot of reasons. Um, it's good in metaphysics because I can believe in David Lewis, and I can use Lewis's beautiful analysis of possible worlds on various things. Um, and this also doesn't exclude like people who just don't buy metaphysics because they can just be like model like they can just appeal to an idea called model innocence. The idea is gaining speed. So the idea is just that model facts are not facts grounded in the world. Model facts are just facts that kind of float around. So they don't have any real weight. And that's okay. We can still debate about them. So yeah. So like the multiverse is good because it works in metaphysics. It's good because model analysis is used in like every area in philosophy too. So it's good in philosophy. It's also good in physics because the eventian interpretation of quantum mechanics sounds pretty good. And it's also good for fine tuning. So, I personally, I'm the 15%. I buy the multiverse. So yeah.
So what's the difference between brute fact and basic fact?
I don't know. I think philosophers use these terms pretty sporadically. I saw the brute fact
Okay.
in a paper written by Jem Mascombe, and like I don't really know what it is. Like she used it in like everyday context. Like it's the facts that we fix when we have a debate or something. But I think philosophers use it very differently in other contexts. So I just think
Okay.
that, a brute fact, a basic fact, and a primitive. I think the main difference is this, right? A brute fact is a kind of a metaphysical characterization. Like some facts are brute, uh, and that's metaphysical. But a basic fact, uh, it's a kind of a noetic, right, relating to the mind or psychological uh, status. Because to be basic means you're the foundation for the noetic structure, the belief system, right? So being a basic fact is not a metaphysical fact. Like the fact that something is a basic fact is not a metaphysical fact. So yeah, that's the difference, I would say.
Okay. Can you explain to us like how the multiverse objection works?
Yeah, so like if there's a multiverse, then we just happen to live in a one that is life supporting, right? We just happen to do it. Because if the world was not life supporting, then we wouldn't figure in it. So we wouldn't. So like all those world that contains no consciousness wouldn't be conscious. So they wouldn't, like, no one would know they exist. So like it's like we got lucky, but if we're unlucky, we wouldn't know we're unlucky. So because we're conscious, we have to be lucky. Yeah, that's basic. There are a few
Okay.
objections that go on and on, but yeah.
What about
What do
some
you
other arguments for?
what do you think
I don't
about
know.
this?
Uh, I mean, it sounds pretty plausible though, right? It's like, right? I mean, like the notion of the multiverse. I'm just like not sure about it. I'm not clear about it. But I feel like if there is only, okay. So the problem is like, how do you know that it's more likely that we have a multiverse instead of like a universe?
Well, that's about quantum mechanics, so I couldn't really explain.
Okay.
But I'll give you one objection that I think the multiverse believer will face. It's this, right? If the multiverse hypothesis is true, then it's very probable that we live in a universe that has a localized condition for life supporting uh, things. So, like, it's very likely that we're going to be born in a universe that's in general very hostile, but only for a very localized space supports life. Because there's going to be far more universe like this than universe in which the entire universe can support life, right? So
Can you
like if
repeat
you're
that?
being, it's well, almost 100% that you're going to live in a universe in which there's going to be a kind of a localized sphere of consciousness and then just nothingness beyond it, or like hostile to life beyond it. But we don't live in
Okay.
such a universe. We live in a universe in which the entire universe is pretty much life supporting in some physical sense. So it's very unlikely that we're going to live in this kind of universe, even if the multiverse is true.
Hmm.
Yeah, but motivating this requires some background in thermodynamics and cosmology, and I wouldn't get into details. Okay.
What about some other arguments for God's existence?
Well, you also have the
Wait, do you want to discuss like Descartes' arguments? Descartes gave two proofs of God.
sure, you can introduce them.
Yeah, all right. One sec. Okay, so in meditation number 3, Descartes gave his first um sort of proof, an attempt to sort of mathematically prove God's existence. So he first says that everything has a cause, and the level of reality of cause is greater than or equal to the level of reality of effect. All right. Um, so the level of formal reality of cause is greater than or equal to the level of objective reality of effect. The idea of God exists in, my mind. This idea has infinite objective reality. So, this idea has a cause with infinite formal reality. I do not have infinite formal reality. So I cannot be the cause of my idea of God. So something that is not me with infinite formal reality must exist. God is the only thing, definitionally, with infinite formal reality. So God must exist. So that's your argument.
Yeah. Um.
Oh, yeah. What do you think?
I don't think it's a good argument, and I think it's pretty obvious. Like, even if you might not know why it's good, well, why it's bad. You can probably see it's bad. Uh, and like when I think of God, right? Is my idea really like a perfect idea? Like that's the first thing that I'm skeptical of. Okay, like think of God right now, right? You either see a kind of middle-aged white man with beards, or you see a kind of ball of light, and like right, like those things are like impressive, white man and light, but like are those things really perfect? Like why isn't it like a rainbow pony? Like why wouldn't that be better? Right? Like how do we really have the perfect idea? Like that's pretty mind blowing to me personally. How Descartes had the perfect idea because I just find it hard to concentrate on the perfect idea, and that's the
Yeah,
first thing. And then again, right? Like that's kind of Hume's objection to like personal identity. Like our brain never really thinks about objects, but sensations. Like when you think of God, you think of the sensation of heat and light and things like that, but you don't really think of an object, right? Like even when we think about other people, like Henry, when you think about like your teacher, right? When you think about Mr. Casterline, you don't think of a an object like a person. You think of like sensations that you associate with him, but you don't really see him. Like you see the colors that he give off. You see the color of his clothes, maybe the sound of his voice, but those things are like those are not really him, right? Those are just sensations he give off. So then again, like how do you perceive an object? Like that again, that's also kind of a mind blowing ability. Uh, and for those two things, I don't think I can see God in my inner light, in my inner heart.
and also I just feel like you could totally be hallucinating. Um, and hallucination could be a cause of your idea, simply, empirically. All right, so that's a not a perfect argument. But later, in meditation number five, he gave this he gave this argument which like some people later called like which some people also later called an ontological argument. All right, so let me read the text in from like a translation. Certainly, the idea of God, or a supremely perfect being, is one which I find within me just as surely as the idea of any shape or number. And my understanding that it belongs to his nature, that he always exists, is no less clear and distinct than is the case when I prove of any shape or number that some property belongs to its nature. Hence, even if it turned out that not everything on which I have meditated in these past days is true, I ought still to regard the existence of God as having at least the same level of certainty as I have hitherto uh, attributed to the truth of mathematics. So, I condensed the argument into syllogism, and the argument is having all of the perfections is part of God's essence. Existence is a perfection. Existence is part of God's essence. If A is an essence of B, B must possess the property of A. So God necessarily exists because he definitionally he possesses the essence of existence, and he's perfect, so he exists.
Right. So there are two things with this. First of all, whether existence is a property is something that Kant really disputed, and Quine really nailed the nail in the coffin. So, like Quine thought that existence is just to have the essential quantifier quantify over that the bound variable, and if the variable is bound within the quantifier, then it exists. So, like, it's not property, right? You can't quantify over a quantifier. Like, well, you can quantify over a quantifier, but like you can't quantify over a quantifier and then just attach a variable to it. Like you can't do that with any property, but not with existence. Sorry. And of course, like people like Menon, like he disputed that. He thought that existence is a property, but like most philosophers today wouldn't treat it as property. And then again, like
So
you
what is
can't.
a property?
Well, a property is like a letter that you can slap in front of a variable. Like
What?
like like a property is something that you attribute to like. Well, that's a good question, and philosophers dispute it, but a very like picture like uh like like a picture like representation would be just things that you attach to identities, uh which you can think of as like pegs on a board, and properties are just things you hang from the peg. That's like very common, say, in metaphysics. Um, and then existence is not one of those things because the peg itself like is already there. You don't have. It's not trivial property either. Like if it's a property, then it's either trivial or it's non-trivial. It's not trivial because it like if it's a property, then whether something exists certainly matters. So it's not trivial, but it's also not non-trivial because why would you attach that thing to a peg when it just says that the peg is there? So it's not trivial, nor is it non-trivial. So it's not a property. It's like a mouthful, but okay.
Yeah. Okay.
This
The
right,
yeah.
you say. Continue.
The other problem I see with the argument is simply that it glosses over, where God exists, right? It doesn't say, it says existence is a perfection. It doesn't specify like where, right? It doesn't say that existence in the actual world
Well, it
is
doesn't
a
matter.
perfection.
Well,
Well, it
yeah,
does really
sure.
matter. Oh, it could be that existence in some other world, beside ours is perfection, right? That
Yeah,
might
but
be the
existing in our
case.
world is also a perfection.
Sure, sure.
So what's your
All right.
objection?
Uh, well, I guess right. So I guess that's not a valid objection. But I agree with the point that existence is not a property. So yeah, I'm not liking this argument.
Cool. Wait, what's the other part? Oh yeah, about causation, right? Uh, how do I say? Like, I think we don't understand causation good enough to say anything about it, because in the current state of metaphysics, no one knows what causation is. Honestly, because there are two reasons for this. So, number one, we don't need the concept in science. Science is not built on causation. Science is built on correlation. We just don't need the idea in science. Like, people think that, oh, causation, that's what like scientists like to use, so we must have a good definition. But it's not a word scientists like to use. If you open like a nature paper, you will rarely see causation. And when you see it, it's usually defined this way. It's defined in terms of a correlation that has all other possibilities gleaned off. So it's really correlation. It's really correlation with a certain property. And it's not causation as we understand it as like an independent category. So that's not real causation. So we don't need that kind of causation. Like, we don't need the metaphysically loaded causation in science. We just need like a very thin kind of correlative causation. So a second reason, of course, is that our ordinary concept of causation is arbitrary and baroque. Can absences cause? Oh, there's a really good paper called "A Demonstration of the Causal Power of Absences," and then the paper is just blank, like, and then the author signed his name, and then the rest of the paper is just a blank piece of paper. So like, is that a cause? Can that absence of a paper cause something? Perhaps, but like, I don't think we know what causation is good enough to say things about it. Unless you can provide me a good analysis, and if I buy it, I can continue arguing. But for now, I don't understand the concept.
So you don't have like a theory of causation? Like there's not one theory that you endorse?
No, because I read a
Hmm.
book on causation, and the conclusion was like he had no idea what it is. The author, of course, was the very famous neo-Aristotelian, who believed that causation was somehow linked to power and disposition. To cause something is to release your power. Uh, like
What?
the fire caused the house to burn because it had the power to burn, and then the house had the power to be burned. But like the author himself admit, like, that's not really a good analysis. That's just, so like, we still don't know what causation is. And like, you might think that the power thing is like outdated or something. No. The book was published like by the Oxford University Press in like the 21st century. Aristotelianism is a rising subject. More and more people are holding this kind of view about causation, and I find it absolutely mysterious.
Wait, what does it mean to like release your power to something?
I don't know. I didn't study it. It's called the metaphysics of powers and dispositions. Right. Like, there's the famous claim that powers have their essences constituted by dispositions. And that's called pandispositionalism. So,
Okay, well, why can't I just say that causation, is just does not exist? It's a mistaken linguistic convention.
sure.
What's wrong with saying that?
There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Okay.
Philosophers don't even like to touch on the problem. So, if you open like a newer book in metaphysics, like Reading the Book of the World, for example, and you go into it and you search causation, and then it's like, let's see, it's basically just we don't know what it is, blah blah blah. Yeah, there's not even a section dedicated to causation because it's too confusing, and it's not really that useful when it comes to analysis, unless you're medieval, of course. Yeah.
Give us a sort of a brief overview with like with the problems of the various theories of causation. Just a quick examples, please.
That'll take too much time.
What?
That'll take too much time.
All right, we can do that in a separate episode, I guess. All right. So, any other argument for God?
Hmm. I think an interesting argument, like against fine tuning, is like if God created this universe just for us, hooray! Like, why would be it so devoid of life? Like, why? Like, it's like saying that God designed this thing to contain us is like building a structure that is the size of Shenzhen to contain a droplet of water and then say the whole facility is designed to contain water. Like why? Like this universe is clearly not designed for us. I mean, just look at the solar system. It's so big. Why is there only humans on Earth? Where's the Martians? Where's the people on Jupiter? And then what about the empty space? Why don't we fill up the empty space? Like it's really badly designed. You look at the nature and you say, "Wow, this is beautiful," but it's beautiful, sure, but it's not designed for us. It's not designed for living things. It's so hostile.
All right. Yeah.
Like when you say that God is the architect, you're setting a very high standard because you're saying that the whole universe is the best possible container for life. Like the universe we have right now, that's the best that you're gonna get. Like if you want to design something to contain human beings and look at the like unemployment, look at the suburbs, look at cities, look at the planets, that's the best you're ever going to get. Like that's what you're claiming when you say that God designed it, and that's a really high bar. And I don't think that our world really meets this bar because I think we can do much better. We can have a lot more human beings. We can have interstellar travel. We can have I don't know, just humans everywhere. But we just get this kind of crap. Sorry, but like I don't think that this is very well designed.
Yeah. Okay. But okay. I want to return to the agnostic versus atheist sort of uh, points of view. Well, I feel like what's at stake here is sort of something that's very difficult to be discussed. Sort of like you say that it is probably true that you know there is not some reason that we cannot grasp for which God done those like natural evils, but still I don't see a basis of saying that. Like besides like an intuition that that's the case, but why would you trust that intuition? You know there there seems to be no reason for either side.
I just gave you two: anti fine tuning, like bad tuning, and problem of evil.
Wait, that tuning might work.
Problem of evil works better.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that like, but you're committed to the claim that it is probably true that um there is not some reason which we cannot grasp.
Well, I think that if okay, this is a little bit confusing, but if God had a reason, then we probably wouldn't know it. But there's probably no God. There's probably no God, so there's probably no God with a reason which we don't know. So if we don't know, then how should I say? I think that there could very well be a God with a reason, but yeah, sure. I'd say that's unlikely that there. Like I think it's an indicator that there's no God, but there could be one. Yeah.
I get that, but you're saying that it is probably true that there is no reason which we cannot grasp for which God created natural evil or other evil. Yeah, but why do you say that? What's the basis of that like probabilistic statement?
because there's no reason we can grasp.
Yeah, so
And
there's
I use inductive inference. There's no reason we can grasp, therefore there's no reason we can grasp.
okay. Why do you think why do you think the statement that it is probably the case that there is no reason um that we cannot grasp for which God created the world? Why do you think this claim is more plausible than the claim that it is probably true that we cannot know if there is a reason uh, if which we cannot grasp for which God created the world? Like, why do you take the atheist point of view instead of the agnostic?
Because uh there's because you look at the world, it's evil. like maybe I know the reason, maybe I don't know the reason. Maybe there's a reason it's good. But like I don't know the reason. You don't know the reason, right? Like why should I think that there is a reason? Uh I think just the natural course of action when there appears to be no reason is just to say there's no reason. And and even if like were there to be a reason, I wouldn't know it. And there's still no reason. Uh
It just seems like there is no reason. So you say that it is probably true that there is no reason.
yeah. And of course that's a bad argument, but it is what it is. I think
Wait,
it's a
why
good
is that that argument?
Oh, because this kind of seeming argument, it only works when you would have known the reason were there to be one. But that's not the case for us. If there's a reason, I probably wouldn't know it because I'm so dumb. So, it's not a good argument. But, uh, well, like, it, I would say that, if that's just one of the reasons that I don't believe, other reasons include conflict between religions. Like, why would there be so many different religions? One of the reason, like, so are you agnostic about every single religion that ever existed?
Yeah.
Like, are you agnostic about whether there are gods on the Olympids, like mountain right now in ancient Greek, in modern Greece? Or are you agnostic about that? Are you agnostic
I have to
about
say I'm atheist about that.
like why are you an atheist about that?
Well, because we have good scientific evidence. I mean, well, our best scientific theory don't account for the for there to be God on Mount Olympus.
But neither does it account for a disembodied mind with supernatural physical properties.
Oh, fine. I guess I'll have to be agnostic on both.
Oh, bro, but obviously you cannot be agnostic on the Greek, right? You don't believe that there's the Zeus guy like turning into an ox and going around and producing offsprings, right? Like, surely you're an atheist about that. You can't just,
No, no. But my belief is simply that uh, we can't say that science is a good theory. We can't say that we're justified in believing in science when it comes to supernatural entities.
but you have to be agnostic on so many different things that you're missing out. Because here's the thing, right? Do you think that whether God exists is a significant truth or significant falsehood if it were to be true or false?
Significant. Significant in what sense?
Like, it matters. Like, for instance, whether there are even number of hair on me is not a significant fact, but whether like I'm alive, it's a significant fact. Do you think that whether God exists is a significant fact?
Sure. Yeah, it is. Okay.
It is, right? So, as epistemic beings, we should try to believe all and only the significant truth, right?
Okay.
So,
Seems
you
sketchy,
should
but
try to
okay.
believe. You should try to believe, right? And if you're agnostic about all these significant issues, you're missing out because you could have chosen the truth, which is be atheist. Like you're missing out on so many opportunities. For example, like I'll say that I'm atheist about the Greek god, and boom, I got a significant truth in my bag. So my epistemic qualities are better than yours because I'm not missing out on these significant truths.
Bro, it's not a game. Okay.
But it's important that we know all and only significant truth.
Sure. Well, no, but like being agnostic versus being atheist itself is a significant truth. One
No,
of them is a significant truth. Yes, no, like which position we're justified in, believe in, is a significant truth.
yeah.
Yeah,
But you
so
can't say
being
that's where
agnostic.
you can't be circular.
Wait, not being circular. I'm saying that uh,
You're
like
saying that we should be
the
agnostic because being agnostic is a significant truth. But we don't know if it's true or
no,
not. So
no. I'm saying that it's possibly a significant truth. I mean, no, I'm saying that like which
we don't
position,
know.
where the position. No, we have to know something.
Agnosticism is not okay. Sure, and like, but that's what we're arguing though. You can't you
Yeah,
can't say that like we're arguing whether or not agnosticism or atheism is true, right?
yeah, yeah.
So how does significant truth play in this?
No, you're saying that I would miss out as an agnostic, but I'm saying that I would not because the position we are justified in believing in, right? Agnosticism versus atheism. The position, one of the positions is a significant truth.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not missing out if agnosticism is in fact the truth and it's significant.
But well, how do you know that's in fact the truth? You're saying that you're not missing out
Bro,
because you believe in
yeah.
agnosticism, and agnosticism is significant truth. But we don't know. Like, if you're right, then of course we should be agnostic. But that's a circular argument because you're saying like we should believe in agnosticism because agnosticism is true. Like, that's circular, right? You can't use it.
No, no, no,
You can't,
no, no. I'm saying that. No, I'm not saying that it's true. I'm saying that we are not missing out. We're not missing out on like significant truth because it is possible that agnosticism is true.
even if it is true, you would still be okay. If it is true, you could still be missing out because you can maybe agnosticism is true, but then zoos don't exist, so you still missed out.
Dang. All right.
Look,
Wait, but I'm closer to truth, right? I'm closer to truth if Zeus in fact existed.
you're so far from it. You're suspending judgment, which means you don't think that
Yeah.
it's true or false,
No, I think that it is either true or false. I'm just saying that we're not justified in believing in either.
and you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you missed out like 100%.
No, but agnostics are not playing the game of missing out, right? We don't care about missing out.
But you should because like if you're atheist, you act in ways that are justified by your belief system. And I think you
Yeah.
should. Like here's some like Buddha statues. Like I don't think that's a good way to spend your time. And if you're atheist, you might do that. Oh, I'm sorry. If you're agnostic, you might do that because you might think, "Oh, what if it's true? I should probably do it." But as an atheist, I don't spend my time doing those things. Of course, I'm still a caring person. I'm still sympathetic. Right? Atheists aren't uh, just animals, but I'm a humanist. But but there are a lot of and I agree. I'm in a boat here with the theist. 'Cause I think the theist also made a significant choice. I think he also didn't miss out. he also made a choice, and he chose to live in a theist way, and that might be good for him, right? But the agnostic is the loser here because he just lost the chance at being successful anyways. Like,
He might be successful at being the most rational, right? If it is the case that agnosticism is in fact the most rational position.
well, um, that would be the case if the evidence really balances out, but don't think it does. So I think you should make a choice.
I guess that makes sense. All right. So no more arguments.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? You know, atheism is not bad. Agnostics.
I'm an
I
atheist now.
I was an agnostic, but then I thought to myself, like, what a lame position. So like, I read some Anthony Flew, and I became atheist.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm atheist.
But I mean, like, I respect every religion. Um, of course I do, and I
Yeah,
think
me too.
we should be tolerant and we should celebrate every religion. Uh, I'm not a Nietzschean. I'm not. I'm not Nietzsche. I like Nietzsche, but I don't agree with his religion views.
Wait,
Yeah,
so what are his religious views?
he hated Christianity and basically every other religion. He thought Buddhism was just an incarnation of Christianity. Uh, Hinduism was like better, but still bad. He thought that was like nihilism inspired Schopenhauer, which is kind of right. Judaism was like Christianity, but a little bit better because it's closer to nature, and anything closer to nature is good for Nietzsche. Um,
Okay.
right.
All
But
right.
and of course, he hated Nazism. Yeah, he was not a Nazi.
Hmm. Okay. Well, next time we want to talk about what is a woman. So stay tuned, I guess.
Sure. I mean, like, it reminded me of like Hitler. Like,
What?
so debating. It's like so many people debate like what is the religious like views of Hitler. Um, so like some people thought that he was a Christian. Like he at first he accepted it and then he rejected Christianity. But then he also criticized atheism, and of course he hated Judaism. But then like it's so complicated, you know? And like the
Okay.
Nazi had like a Protestant support. So like it's just confusing. But I mean I do see how it might matter in the eyes of some, but but I think anyone can be evil and anyone can be good. And if it works with you, then it works. And I don't agree with people like William James who say that, you know, believing in God necessarily makes you morally better, or even statistically makes you morally better. Um, yeah, that
Okay.
there is
Yeah.
an
Yeah. Yeah.
argument.
I understand. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like when you actually look at who's supporting capital punishment, who's supporting abortion ban. I'm sorry, abortion is more controversial, but like just if you like capital punishment, right? And just search like who support capital punishment, right? It's interesting. It's interesting. I'll leave it to you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I
Okay.
guess that's that.
Okay. Thank you.
See you later.
See you. Hey, you know, like,
Yeah.
wait, 你录完了吗？
I can stop recording right now.
Okay,
All right.
stop.